another edition of Giraffe Same Media with me, Kathleen Ratourne. We're an organisation that aims to connect people in conservation by holding live interviews. Today, you'll see that I'm joined by two people, and I'm very excited by that. We are joined by Carlien Esterhuizen, and she is the project administrator for Project Rhino, and we're also joined by Grant Fowlds, and he is working with Project Rhino alongside Rhino Art. So we're going to start with you first, Grant. If we could just talk a little bit about your background and how you got involved in conservation.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. Thank you for having myself and Carlien. They say behind every successful business is a woman, and it's Carlien in this case. We work together in Project Rhino. Rhino Art is just a subsidiary of Project Rhino, and it's the educational arm. We educate kids in community conservation, in children, educating children about communities, also in the chiefs and the other people, the elders in the community areas around private and provincial parks. I hope I'm coming through clear. Is there a little bit of background? I don't know if it's phones or whatever.
No.
So yeah, is it fine? It was a bit squelchy in the beginning, Kathleen, but it seems to be settling down now. So yeah, my background in conservation started probably a decade and a half ago, and it started by us building a park in the Eastern Cape called Amakhala. It's quite well known throughout the world for all sorts of conservation efforts, rebuilding and rewilding, rhino conservation, and I suppose I can put my success down to having started with that and started buying rhinos and moving into rhino conservation probably 2 decades ago, and really got into the mainstream in the last decade. And yeah, I've been with Project Rhino, and in a fundraising role, in a conservation education role. It seems to have morphed into all sorts of other things, and we kind of do everything between myself and Carlien, and another director called Chris Small. We involved in everything from fundraising to changing tires of vehicles and administration. Definitely some hottie-daws on here. You know what a hottie-daw is, a harvest.
Yeah, it makes it all the more authentic, Grant. Don't you worry about that. We've got chickens here that like to make an appearance. So yeah, we always bring the animals into the shows as well. And then, Carlien, can you talk to us a little bit about your background as well, about how you got involved in the project, your passion for conservation?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. It's lovely to be with you, Kathleen. So I am a field ecologist by trade. I lived and worked in Madikwe Game Reserve for 16 years. And yeah, I was very lucky. I had the opportunity to work hands-on with the Big Five. And I literally lived and loved my job. So I then moved to KZN, where I started with Project Rhino. And I have to admit, I did it because I got married. So that was the reason for moving out of the bush. Luckily, I could join the Project Rhino team, which is a passionate bunch of people. And we work throughout KwaZulu-Natal, in the Zululand and the Midlands, and we are the umbrella body for protection of rhino, stopping rhino poaching and stopping wildlife crime in KwaZulu-Natal. So we're the umbrella body, and there is 32 member reserves under us that work together with us to stop wildlife crime and to fight wildlife crime.
Awesome. I mean, we're going to go a bit deeper into that as we're going along. I just want to touch on as well, Grant, you was mentioning about the Rhino Art was a bit of a subsidiary from Project Rhino. But what does it entail? What is it actually about?
It's merely a template, a passport to talk to a child about conservation. So it was started by a mentor and a great philanthropist and adventurer called Kingsley Holgate. Several years ago, he went along to some community areas and he outlined a rhino on a piece of A3 paper and asked them to draw what they thought would be the problem with rhinos, the outcomes, the crisis, how they would resolve it, and write a message on the bottom of the ID, well, not ID number, put their name and their school and their province. So that gave us the demographics and a one-line solution as to what that is. They could draw anything they liked on that piece of paper. There was no pass rate. It could have been a gun. It could have been a flag. It could have been blood. It could have been a poacher. Information that we've got back from these children throughout the world, because we've done Rhino Art in about 28 countries in the world, including Vietnam and Southeast Asia, Hong Kong, and all sort of consumer countries, supposed consumer countries. So it's really been an amazing project to reach people for around about $1 per child. And at the moment, we've lost count at over 500,000, I think 600,000 children that have been reached in this program. I don't know if there's any program that's been as effective manually, not through science or social media, other than the Rhino Art program. And it's reached other animals, like lions and gorillas and so on. It's morphed into that. So that basically is Rhino Art, and from there it goes into World Youth Summits, as well as taking to the various parks. Those that win, we take them to the parks. So it's not only about a lesson on a paper; it goes well beyond that. So yeah, I can talk all day about Rhino Art, but it's quite a success story.
Was there a common theme that you were seeing coming through with the art? Was there one common image that you'd see?
Yes, very much so. One of the ladies that worked with us, Bronwyn Lang, actually did a master's in Rhino Art so that we could see from a master's documentation point of view what the theories and outcomes were. Because there's no point in doing all this work if we don't have a result. So a lot of the outcomes were the 10 most evident things on the pages. Well, I'll just mention 5 perhaps. Was the fact that the flags were used of the countries, which meant that we were a patriotic nation trying to solve a problem. The other one was there was a lot of blood shed. Obviously, the animals died. The third one was that there was a lot of violence. There was guns. There was people dying. The fourth one was there was a lot of tourism affected. So people had vehicles, and there were buses and there were airplanes arriving, and there were people viewing them. The other one could have been money. So there was money laundering. There were dollar signs. There were rand signs. There was, the foreign exchange floating around these images. So those are just 5 of the outcomes, but there was a lot more to it, in this theories of change, we call it. Do something about education in the youth sector.
I think that's incredible. We've got a comment coming through from Winnie. She's a regular watcher of the show. Thank you, Winnie. And she's saying, do you show your beautiful artwork of your rhino?
It's quite an amazing. We should actually do it. There is a private collection. There's a guy called Andries Botha who suggested that this would be the biggest private art collection in the world of kids art. And we have got it somewhere, and we have put it into a safekeeping. If I had a chance to I don't know how to use this magic machine of yours, but maybe I can share a couple of pages while we're chatting.
What we can try and share.
Otherwise, on the Rhino Art
1% of the work.
page.
Yes, as well. Yeah, please do check out the Rhino Art Facebook page, and you will be able to see some of the images there. So then, Carlien, we're going to switch over to you. If you could talk us a little bit about Project Rhino. You have a 4-pronged approach. So we're going to kind of break through the different approaches that you have. But one of them is the coordination unit. Can you explain a little bit about what that is and what that means?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'd like to start off by saying that Project Rhino is celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. So it's an amazing milestone for us. Sad that we have been fighting wildlife crime and rhino poaching for 10 years. Incredible that we are an NGO that are driven on fundraising to sustain all projects. None of our members pay any fees to join Project Rhino. So the support we give is all fundraising, and that's where the coordination comes in. So our team is not a team of 100. Our team, I think you're probably seeing half the team on the screen. It is really just myself, Grant, Chris Small. We've got a pilot, and then we have got a canine unit with a canine manager and 5 handlers. And Richard Mabanga, who drives our Rhino Art for us. And then, of course, we've got different teams that support us, but those couple of guys that I mentioned now is the driving force of Project Rhino, and that's what we call the coordination. Now, if the coordination team is not there, then none of the projects will really be able to run. The team that I mentioned now is really responsible for all our marketing, our fundraising, making sure that the airplane is in the sky, that the airplane has fuel, that the vehicles are registered, that the funds roll in, that our name gets out there, and that the teams actually have the ability to stay on the ground and do what they do. So I don't know if I can continue with the next tier, because they all kind of run fluidly into each other. But we have then ranger and reserve support, and that pretty much takes all our projects into consideration. So we've got, like I've mentioned, we've got a canine team. To give you an idea, our canine team in the last 12 months since lockdown started have confiscated 10 weapons from robbers and poaching syndicates. We've had counterfeit busts of one was 84 million rands worth of counterfeit goods. We've and I really shouldn't quote these numbers off by heart, but these are the last figures that I can remember. We've stopped or caught crime syndicates that have the stolen vehicles. We've had we've managed to actually track down poachers busy with poaching, busy with poaching, whether it be snares. Our teams remove snares between 50 and 80 snares a month. Our eyes in the sky, our Zapwing plane is out every day, every morning, every afternoon, flying for our reserves, so that the work is non-stop. Richard is constantly busy with, Richard and his team, should I say, is constantly busy with conservation education in the communities around our game reserves. And then, of course, when COVID happened and the schools couldn't have all the kids together because of the COVID regulations, suddenly our Rhino Art team turned into a team that started supporting the wildlife communities by providing food supplies, because so many of our reserves had to let their staff go. And of course, most of these staff members are the sole breadwinners. So it was so important for Project Rhino to really step up a gear, and with the Kingsley Holgate Foundation, Do More Foundation, there's so many people that pull together to assist us to start feeding and providing food packages to the communities. And this, obviously, the food packages didn't go just as a food package, but it had a conservation. Every package that was delivered had a conservation message along with that. So for us, it's very important that conservation is the driving of any support that we give, So that pretty much sums up the reserves of, not really. We've got horse units in numerous of our member reserves, which we support. And that's everything from training to assisting with veterinary bills, feeding the horses, training the staff, those type of things. We assist with dehorning in most of our member reserves. We have what am I missing? There's so many things that we do. And then we've, like Grant's mentioned, we've got the Rhino Art, which is the conservation education message. And he's mentioned that we've reached over 600,000 children through this message, which is amazing. And then Grant can probably speak to you better about supporting the conservation economy. But the last thing that we do is our wildlife and youth leadership and development. We host World Youth Wildlife Summits, Rhino Summits every 2 years. COVID has caught us a little bit. The last year we've had to postpone again. But that's a massive event for us where we get youth from across the globe to get together to discuss wildlife issues taking place throughout the world, not just Africa, but throughout the world. Which we really bring in the best of the best speakers to speak to these youth members. And Grant would be able to tell you, we've sent over delegates to I think it was Asia. So it really is, we try and keep the message going, keep the youth engaged as much as we possibly can. And then the last one is supporting a conservation economy, which Grant is hands-on with, and he could probably expand on that slightly better than I can.
Okay, so when you're talking about the wildlife youth and leadership development, I mean, it's something I'm very passionate about myself, and I know a lot of our viewers are as well. Can you talk to us some of the highlights that you've seen here, and if you've seen people have a change in attitude? What's kind of your thoughts here?
Grant, are you? So for us, with the wildlife. So for us, with the World Youth Wildlife Summit, we've really seen youth that had very little understanding about the problem really turn out to taking the message home, back to Vietnam, to all over the world, Botswana, you name it, wherever they go, and they continue with the conservation education. They have mini summits in their countries. They create videos about how to stop wildlife crime, how to do small things to make big differences. And I think that is our big aim, is to just keep communicating the message, keep educating people on what conservation is and how important it is for us to keep educating, so that we do not lose the wildlife, and that we keep it for future generations.
And then Grant, did you want to add anything on to that?
Yeah, I guess I would just like to say, Kathleen, that after doing all this work with the youth in schools and in art and in Rhino and visits and the cost, one has to be able to get the graduates from the Rhino Art program to go to go to the next level. And we've identified young champions. One of them, for example, Pelisa Machola, we took to Vietnam. She's now working for the police, but she was a culture dancer. Another one works at Rhino Ridge. She started with me in 2013. She's now a game ranger. Now, Pelisa can talk Mandarin. She's been to see the world, and they've been able to sell the culture in the African townships and the African rural communities through having been awarded with a greater sort of honor. Another one, Nadav Osendrava, went to the Wildlife Justice Commission in The Hague and spoke about wildlife crime. So these are all people that have come through the champion, that have been coming through the system for the last decade or so. So I think the summit, the World Youth Summit, world meaning it's open to the world, to as many people that we can afford to bring in from the rest of the world to witness the problem at hand, to chat about the outcomes, to discuss them, and then to find solutions and sign declarations that the satis and the leaders can then become agents of change.
And then Carlien touched on it
We're
briefly.
running out of time.
Oh, no, you were all good. You're fine. So Carlien touched on it briefly. We were talking about building conservation economy projects. Can you talk a little bit about this and how communities have benefited from that?
Yeah, I know she spoke about that, but that's really a lot of work that I'm doing. So effectively what that is, Kathleen, is that, when we've solved the poaching problem, and many Africans that are watching this will know that it will never be solved. We're just trying to make it harder for people to poach. But there is a big danger at the world's growth, or Africa's growth, that if we do not preserve places that are pristine and that have habitat, we may have solved the poaching, but we'll have no space for the animals to live. And effectively, what we're doing is creating habitat. Biodiversity, climate change, carbon credits, deforestation, place for rhinos, you can call it what you like, tourism opportunities in communities, more job opportunities and lodges. Look, everything is taken a bit of a knock now with COVID, and the latest announcement out of the UK, or globally actually, hasn't really helped us much. But we the world's economy and tourism to thrive. We're chugging along slowly, but the conservation economy, you can call it rewilding, as Sir David Attenborough put it in his new movie. It's been around for many, many years, but he kind of just said that we need to do it now. We cannot, there's no time left. If we start in 10 years' time, there's going to be very little habitat to restore. So while we've got a chance, it's up to us to take the baton and do that. And that is basically one of the pillars of our economy.
Yeah, I mean, and what you guys are doing is absolutely incredible, and you're really trying to make a difference and change lives in the process, which I think is very important, that you have that community buy-in as well. And what are you seeing in terms of the poaching crisis? Have you seen things? Are they getting better? Is it getting worse? What sort of trends are you seeing here?
Well, it's a really difficult one to answer. At the start of COVID, obviously rhino poaching went down because we had complete lockdown in our country, and people couldn't move around. But now that people can move around again, and now that people have lost so many jobs, and poverty has really taken its toll, now we're not just looking at rhino poaching, but poaching in general has increased dramatically. People are hungry. People now put snares out and they poach smaller things to eat because, they need to put food on the table. So poaching for us has entered a completely different level, that it's not just our rhino that we're protecting, but pretty much everything else with a heartbeat. And we've always known that rhino protection, if you are looking after your rhino, you are going to look after everything else. But the snaring has just, fence cutting, snaring, theft of wood collection, all those things that's really due to poverty. Dog hunting in our province, in KwaZulu-Natal, is massive. And we see more and more dog hunting throughout our reserves, which it has a massive impact on our product, really.
And are you seeing the same thing, Grant?
Yeah, I think if you're referring to rhino, kind of the general says it's a marginal victory of us slowly winning the war, but we actually have less animals to poach now, so hence the numbers actually reducing. So it's a moral victory, and we think we're winning. But as Carlien said, that there's new things coming in, like the dog meat, the dog hunting industry, which is not only for meat, it's also for sport. And they're killing willy-nilly. And people are, if there's no awareness, they're just taking animals with. So, but on the brighter side, the crime intelligence is improving, the arrests. So people are getting heavier sentences. So we are very grateful that rhino poaching and wildlife crime is seen in some countries in Africa, and even in South Africa. It is starting to become a punishable crime, a bigger punishable crime than it was a while ago.
And then that kind of feeds nicely into my next question, Grant, because I know that you've written, co-written a book called Saving the Last Rhino. Can you talk to us a little bit about this?
Yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed about the name because I want to give the credit to those that are also saving the last rhinos. But my publishers in London decided that it was a fantastic marketing name. So, and they've proven to be right. It sold fairly well, and it is a book about rhinos and my life and Rhino Art, and a real true life story, and co-written by Graham Spence, who wrote The Elephant Whisperer very, very well. He actually lives in London, but he's an ex-South African. So I'm truly blessed to be able to just tell a story, and I think there's a story in everybody, and mine just happened to be about my family and my brother, William, who's a vet, having done surgery on a rhino called Tandi, and that having had a calf where it was, instead of putting it down, he fixed it up, or fixed her up, and she had a calf, and we were all in tears. And then she had another calf, and we had more tears. She had a third calf, and now she's a grandmother, So those are the little lovely margins, and where everybody said that Tandi was a waste of time. The public relations work that came out of Tandi was amazing. Just having a book does help, even though I may want the credit. It should go to all those that are actually saving the rhinos, not just me.
I think it's also a great way of raising awareness for people that may not be aware of the situation that is happening with the rhinos, and kind of getting that out to the general public. And I also understand you've got a second book that's due to be released in May next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's again, it's published by Little Brown Hachette in London. It takes a while to write a book, and again, Graham Spence is my co-author, and that is all about the trials and tribulations about working on the conservation front lines. The byline is, I always have to think about it: Rewilding Africa, restoring the wilderness on a war-ravaged continent. So it's literally what we have to go through, Carlien and myself, and others, in our daily work. All plain sailing. Everybody says that we have a lovely life. Sometimes, when we're looking at a lovely sunset, at sunrise, and a beer in the evening at sunset. But we've got to raise money, and there's rhino fatigue, and there's politics, and people have got egos. So I think our job in Project Rhino, because we run so many reserves, is that we cannot have an ego, and if we do have, we will fail. So Rewilding Africa is just it's a sequel to Saving the Last Rhinos, and it's about work outside the country as well. I also have worked in Angola and DRC, Rwanda, and other countries, Mozambique as well. So it's not only about South Africa. It's about gorillas, about my friend who's just, been the Earthshot finalist, John Kahekwa, an amazing man. Relationships that I have with people like Dr. Jacques Flamant looking for rhino range in southern Africa for more and increase our gene pool. So that's what it's all about.
Excellent. And I think they're available on Amazon. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, most of the places you can buy them. Obviously, the recent book is only out in May next year, but there's already a story out. I think I know they're doing the jacket and all that now. But the other one you can buy on any. It's got a publisher in New York actually, and Pegasus, and it's available on audio and all the other platforms. As you know, I'm very bad at that. They just said, you carry on doing what Grant Fowlds can do, and we'll worry about it. That's why I couldn't even change my Facebook profile to give you access to it.
That's absolutely fine. Carlien, we're going to bring you back in. So basically, if people are watching this and they're liking the work that you're doing and they want to be able to support you guys, what's the best way for them to do that, and how can they go around that?
Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, so Project Rhino is completely donation-based. Our projects can't run without funding, and we fundraise for a living. Like you can hear, neither Grant or myself have a fundraising background. We're passionate conservationists, so we definitely stretch ourselves to get the fundraising done. But our teams are totally dependent on us. If there are no funds, the work cannot go on. All our members, none of our members pay any fees to be part of Project Rhino, because that's we feel that we need to support them. There's already so much pressure on them with having extra team members that need to be paid, uniforms and extra surveillance, and the poaching crisis just getting more and more and bigger and bigger. So our canine teams, our Zapwing, our Feeding the Wildlife communities, Rhino Art, it's all fundraising driven, and if there's no funds, the projects stop. Of course, things like our canine units, we can't stop and start because there's such a intrinsic relationship between a canine handler and his canine, and we cannot afford to break that bond. Our canines are all habituated to the harsh weather conditions of Zululand. In fact, our reserves have built such relationships with the canines and trust relationships. It's, there's so many factors that play a role that we cannot actually afford to stop start our canines. But the Zapwing, we can park it if we don't have fuel. Touch wood, luckily, I don't know how we do it, but every month we seem to scrape through, and our teams are still going, and they unbelievable bunch of people that they know if there's no funding, there's no salaries, and they still keep going, which is unbelievable. So any support that we can get would be gratefully appreciated. Our website is www.projectrhinokzn.org, and there are platforms that you can have a look at I think there's a tab that says how you can help. We've got a PayPal, we've got Zapper, we've got global giving and online payment platforms, as well as our banking details, and any contribution. And if it's not a financial contribution, word of mouth is all we ask. Just spread the good news, spread the feel-good story, because we work really hard to create some good feel-good stuff to protect our rhinos and to keep conservation going in our beautiful country.
I completely agree. I mean, a lot of times people feel a bit disheartened and it can be very overwhelming. So if you are watching this, please do give it a like, comment and a share. The more people that see it, the more awareness that we can raise for the organisation and the work that they're doing to protect our wildlife and wild spaces. Okay, so I've only got one more question left. If you're watching back home and you would like to put a question to either Grant or Carlien, then please do just pop it in the comments section and I will be able to do that. We've had some lovely comments coming through as we've been talking, so thank you so much for all your positive feedback. We really appreciate it. So I like to end things on a positive note. So I want to ask both of you what your favourite success story is. So maybe we'll start with you, Carlien, and then we'll go to Grant.
I don't know if I'd answer it the way people think, but I think my My success story is when I was a little girl, I wanted to work in the bush. I wanted to protect and serve. And my dad was probably the person who taught me about the bush and nature and really gave me the passion. And he sat me down one day and he told me, you must realize you'll never be rich. Your heart will be full and your life will be full, but you'll never make money. And I guess I didn't realize what he said to me back then, but I followed my heart and I have had the richest life. I've done things that most women my age would never dream of doing. I've touched a rhino. I've worked with elephants and buffalo and lions, and I've really had the privilege to taste and feel and experience my Africa in a way that most people would never have the privilege to do. And if I can just help, spread the message and the love and the passion, then that's what I'd like to do. So I think my defining moment was making that decision that life is not about money and wealth, but rather following my passion, because I live what I do, and I think it's really important to make that difference in life.
Completely agree. Grant, if we head over to you, if you could tell us what your favourite one is. Oh, well, Grant's on the phone. It's the great things about doing a live. You never know what's going to happen. Grant, are you able to tell us your favourite success story?
Yeah. I know that's rude, but it was quite an important call about tomorrow. But yeah, look, I'd like to concur with Carlien's thing, is that we do this for the love and more for the financial reward. You know how many times people have asked me, what is your best moment? What is the most defining? And what changed your life? And I can never give them a standard answer. And when I was thinking, I know you asked me beforehand, when I was thinking about what to say, everything.
Oh, looks like we may have had a bit of technical difficulties with Grant. Grant, you still there?
It looks like Grant's hanging.
Well, Grant's frozen in time while telling us
Over 20 years.
There we go. He's coming back.
Oops. I think if I could answer that for Grant, I think he's got defining moments every day. He works with unbelievable people and experiences unbelievable things all day, every day. And if you want to read his defining moments, read his book. It states it all. And there's some moments where you really read the book and you go, no ways. So just read his book. That's got all his defining moments in it.
Well, it looks like we got you back, Grant. You're back in the show.
Yeah, I apologize, man. I thought it was a power failure, but no, it's not. And I did put the lights on. So, yeah, defining moments. I was just saying, Kathleen, that they've all taken many, many years to evolve. Whether you're rewilding, whether it's Rhino Art, and I guess our defining moment with Project Rhino would be to see our rhinos. We've already halved the poaching, and I don't say we. Whoever's working at the project, we could look back in 5 years' time and say that was a defining moment where we decided to do this or do that, or do the Rhino Art, or do the canine unit, or buy another aeroplane, or just scrape through COVID, or feeding the people. And we look back now and all those things, and they could have been based and affected by many, many people, not just us, the three of us. But somebody's got to take the lead, Somebody has to be the person that ignites that. And I guess defining moments were, when we had our first rhino poached personally, when you reintroduce an animal to a new habitat, when you run a summit, it's a defining moment. So there are many of them, but they're very small victories made into one big victory, I would say. So, yeah, I'm sorry if that's not the right answer. But also people that we meet, I'm also very blessed to meet people in this business of all descriptions, people that are famous, people that are humble, people that are wealthy, people that think, and whether you're a prince or a pauper, you fit into conservation.
And I think that's such a key message, that it doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing. Everyone can play their part to do a little bit to help support conservation. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up now, but thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you, everyone, for all your kind comments and your support. We really appreciate it. Is there anything either of you two would like to say before we say goodbye?
I'd just like to thank you for reaching out to us. You could have chosen anybody else in the world, and you chose Project Rhino. And it's not because we're the best. I don't know what sparked it, but anyway, we just happened to be on the right time at the right moment. And that's what life's all about, taking the opportunity. And maybe there's somebody out there that would like to reach out and support. Carlien.
Oh, Carlien, you still there?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kathleen. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so very much for inviting us on board. It was an absolute privilege to chat to you, and thank you that we could share our story with you, and for the opportunity. It really is greatly appreciated.
Absolutely no problems. Thank you both for the great work that you're doing. Please do, if you are watching this, go and follow them on Facebook, give them a like, comment, share. Again, the more people that see this, the more awareness that we can raise and the more help that we can do for conservation. So thank you everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And for me, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.